Well, here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next. It's the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am joined by Boston-based experimental noise rock three-piece E, who recently put out their fifth full-length record, Living Waters. And I was joined by all three members of the band. They were originally formed by Thalia Zedek and Jason Sanford. Talia's played in a variety of different bands, and she also has a solo career, which is basically running in parallel to E. And as we talk about in the interview, she basically plucked Jason from his previous band, Neptune. And they have recently been joined by a new drummer, Ernie Kim, who played on the record and is also now a full member of the band and will, together with Talia and Jason, be touring as E. And the band is actually just about to play some dates in the US, the first of which is going to be on the 7th of June in Providence, Rhode Island. And after that, they're going to go to Europe, where they're going to start with a gig in Brussels, in Belgium. And that's going to be on the 13th of June. And there's going to be a number of dates going through Europe before the band comes back to the US in July. And you can check out all of the various dates that E are going to be playing over June and July by going to their website, which is abandcalledE.com. So, as well as talking about the record, talking about some of the inspirations, we got into some of the innovations in guitar playing of the band for the latest record. So, basically, Jason and Talia are both guitar players, and they don't have a bass player in the band. But what they do have is they have some clever ways of replicating bass tones. And so on the latest record, Talia actually introduced a new technique, a new bit of kit as well. And the band was inspired in part by a band called Whorepaint, Whore, who are no longer in existence. But yeah, the various members of E wanted to shout them out, and to also mention the fact that Whorepaint, or some of the members of Whorepaint, went on to be in another band called Handsy, who are active, and you can check both of them out on Bandcamp. And yeah, I can attest to them both being well worth checking out if you are a fan of E and if you're a fan of noise rock or alternative rock in general. So we talked about the album, we talked about the forthcoming tour, we talked about their various histories, musical histories, and as is my wont, we got a little bit philosophical as well, talking about why they make music, as well as getting into some of their sort of lyrical interests and musical interests. It was a really enjoyable conversation. I think it was very insightful, and I hope that you will find it equally entertaining and insightful too. They're a great group of people, and yeah, I'm very happy to have been able to have had them on the podcast. This was originally released in a shortened Q&A version on the New Noise Magazine website, which you can check out if you haven't seen it already. But yeah, there was plenty of content that there wasn't space for in the web version. So now here, in all of its glory, is the full interview with E. And yeah, if you want to follow the band, as I mentioned before, you can go to a band called E.com and you can get various links to their different socials like Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like to follow me, you can do so at Tom Osman Sounds. And if you would like to check out what I'm doing musically, you can go to tomosmansounds.com. I am very soon going to be putting out my latest record, which is a collaboration with Agurio Drama, a kind of weird experimental electronic ambient noise techno thing with me talking some madness over the top of it. So yeah, I don't know what it's like really, but maybe you'll like it. And more than that, oh yes, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on Substack or you're listening on Apple Podcast, wherever you are absorbing this interview, I would be very grateful if you would subscribe, thumbs up, 5 stars, all that kind of thing, post comments, say nice things, say bad things. But, just in general, I would recommend spreading more love than hate into the world. But before the interview starts, I'm going to play a little clip of the last track from Living Waters, which is Gain of Function. and I'm going to play the track in full at the end of the interview. But other than that, I think there is nothing left for me to say other than E, take it away. Thank you very much for joining me. And yeah, I'm excited to get into the conversation. I've been listening to Living Waters quite a bit in the last few days and really enjoying it. So I'm keen to talk about the album and also to talk about a bit of your collective and separate musical histories, and also one thing. Well, there's various tour things I wanted to talk to you about, and one thing right off the bat. So, Thalia, your last name, Zedek.
Yes.
This sounds like, I understand that you were born in the US, but this sounds to me potentially like an Eastern European name. And I lived in Prague for 5 years. So I know the Czech Republic a bit. And I noticed that as part of your tour, you've got 4 dates in the Czech Republic. And there were a couple of places that I didn't actually know the names of that I had to look up. So I thought, either over the years you have built up some sort of grassroots connections around the Czech Republic, but I'm wondering, is this name Czech? Is it Polish? Or is it something else?
It's actually Lithuanian is the origin. Yeah, my father was born in Lithuania in Kovno. So and it's gone through a few different changes over there. He didn't come directly to the United States, so he moved to Israel first. So Zedek is actually the original name was Zeduk, and then it changed it to Zedek in Israel, and then I guess the English Zedek here. But I get that a lot. You're not the first person that's asked me if it was Czech. So it's very close to some sort of Czech names. Yeah, people seem to pick up on that. When I asked my father what did it mean, like in Lithuania, and he was like, no, it didn't mean anything. It was just a name. So
okay. And thinking about the tour in general, to that point that you're going into some quite interesting locations and you are going all around Europe. I'm kind of curious because I guess Jason and Thalia, you've toured together quite a lot. Ernie, is this your first time in any musical project touring with them?
Oh, this is the first time. Oh, this is the second time rather. We went to with these guys in 2022. We did a same amount of dates in Europe.
Okay. But so Living Waters is the first record that you're on, but
this is the first record I'm on. But yeah, we kind of promoted the last EP and the LP before then. I stepped in and played.
Ernie did the last European tour with us. But Gavin McCarthy from Karate, who was our drummer on the first 4 records, he recorded the record before this, but then couldn't do the tour for like family reasons and kind of ended up leaving the band. And though we're still good friends and he still plays with me in another band that I have, but so this will be Ernie's second tour with us, but first one playing songs that he actually wrote.
Yeah. So I would imagine that you've toured extensively within the US and around Europe. But I'm wondering at this stage, when you are planning a tour like this and you're deciding where you're going to go, what venues you're going to go to, how much are those sort of relationships already inbuilt that like where you can go, and how much are you finding new locations to play?
I think it's a bit of both. And just to briefly go back to a question you asked before, there is a connection with the Czech Republic with this band. And it's that our record label, Silver Rocket, is based in Prague. And we knew them before because they also are a booking agency. They're kind of like a collective that does booking and record labels. So we initially met them as as a booking agency, and then we asked them to put out our record after the Thrill Jockeys thing ended. So yeah, so that's the Czech connection.
And that does make, I'm sorry, I'm jumping between questions, but that does make sense and answers
Yeah.
another thing I was going to ask you, because I saw that you recorded the album in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but then you mixed it in Prague, and I thought, aha, there is some other connection going on here. So
Yes,
you
yes.
basically explained that.
Yeah, there's the Silver Rocket introduced us to this guy Andre Jezik, which I'm probably not pronouncing absolutely correctly, but initially to master, he mastered Complications, right? That was 2 records ago, and then the record before this and this record, he both mixed and mastered it. And he's a really talented and really nice guy, so we really enjoyed working with him. We didn't go to Prague for the mixing session, so that was done remotely, though that would have been fun, but I think that was a little out of our budget. But we do like working with him. He was described to us initially as the Steve Albini of the Czech Republic, but
Well, I do have a little, this is a total side thing, but I have a personal ambition one day to go work with Steve Albini, so I can definitely
ah,
relate to this
yeah.
idea.
Are you an engineer or do you do
No, I make some music, I guess, although at the moment I'm doing more like kind of
work with
experimental.
him in the studio like that? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Not to be like his assistant,
I
but to
meant like
basically
work
have
for
him.
him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
But
course.
yes, so in terms of the tour, like this is one of these things I'm really kind of I'm trying to get a better understanding of some of the practicalities for independent musicians in terms of like the sort of things that you have to manage yourselves, when you don't have a big record label behind you. So I am curious about how you organize a whole tour like this one, and maybe how this tour you've got coming up compares to tours that you've organized in the past. Is there anything different, or are you kind of in a groove at this point in terms of just how to do things?
Talia did pretty much all of the U.S. booking, so the bookends of the tour, and then in Europe, where we've done more touring actually than the U.S., we have a booking agent there, and he's based in Berlin. So he set up most of the tour, and then there's like segments of that, so like the Czech shows. The guys from Silver Rocket will do that. This is probably this tour is a little later in the season than we have gone in the past, and so it's been a little tricky because it's Europe and people take these long holidays, and so we've had to kind of scramble around and fill in a couple of dates, and we've been sort of emailing old contacts and trying to get fresh leads. So there's a lot of even with an agent helping us, there's still a lot of stuff that we are doing ourselves, including, of course, when we get there driving.
Yeah. So who's got the major responsibility for that, or do you share it?
Yeah, it's all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
from what I remember in Czech Republic, they call it cucumber season. I can't remember exactly why, but it's got something historical to do with picking cucumbers, and that's like what they call the holiday season.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, we have a booking agent, and then he does what it's his name is Corrado, and that's El Baracho, based in Berlin, and but we're really DIY. Like, I don't know if you saw that article in the Guardian about touring, and it was a big article. I don't know. There's a big article about touring, and you know, a lot of bands are having a really hard time right now because of various expenses. So we've always kept our expenses to a minimum. So I would say that our tours are about the same sort of, are doing okay. It's just the 3 of us. We don't travel with a sound man or a merch person or a driver or anything like that. And we jam a cano, as Mike Watt would say.
Yeah, it's a streamlined operation.
Yes, very.
And are there any places that you're going to be traveling to for the first time on this tour? And are there any places that you're particularly looking forward to playing? Like, I would imagine from the experience you have that you kind of get different reactions from different parts of the world, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, I'm really excited to go to Poland. I've never played in Poland before. I mean, I've done a fair amount of touring in Europe, but I've never made it to Poland. Well, that's not true. I walked across the border and visited it for 10 minutes.
And yeah, what about for you, Talia? Is there anywhere in particular that is kind of like a key for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely playing a few. I mean, we've played a lot of these places before. I mean, also have a band called Come that has been touring again fairly recently after a long time. So I've been to a few of these places, but there is always some new places, which is exciting. I've never played in Montpellier before in France. Never played in Fosso Seggiore in Italy, which is I don't know, a place I've never heard of. It's a tiny seaside town on the Adriatic. It should be a lot of fun though. It's a good place to play in July. I've let's see, is there anywhere else that's new for me on this tour? Um, we're playing this festival in Germany, which is in a town I've never played before, and yeah. But I mean, there is a bit of a circuit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're definitely playing some places where he has played before and where I've played before with other bands that I'm in too. So it's the Chitlin circuit, as a friend of mine says.
How far back, in terms of your, I mean, I guess you all started out in music completely separately from each other. In terms of touring, how far back does it go for all of you? Like Talia, I think your first band was White Women. Is that right? This is like
Yeah,
late 70s, but in
early
terms
80s,
early 80s,
early
okay. But in terms of like going on the road, whether, nationally or internationally, how far back does that go for you?
the first band that I ever toured with was with Live Skull, and that was like I went to Europe with them, and I think it was in like 85 or 86. So I still have a passport with a stamp from like the DDR and having to go through like East Germany and through Checkpoint Charlie to get into Berlin. And this was definitely pre pre Google and pre like navigational devices and which kind of at least for me is the thing that has changed touring the most is just like not getting completely lost in Italy or sort of like ancient town, like which used to be like a guaranteed like you have to build like an extra 3 hours into every day because just to get lost. And even with a million maps, you usually end up having to just call the promoter from a payphone and ask him to meet you somewhere and guide you. So, but anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I think my first touring started in the 80s. And then I did a lot of touring in the 90s with Com while we were active.
And Jason, what about for you?
I started touring the US pretty heavily in the mid 90s and then um started making it to Europe in 2004 was I think the first time my old band did a tour over there.
Was that Neptune?
That was Neptune, yeah.
And Ernie, what about for you?
I've never been in a band popular enough to really go on tour. Some of my early bands, like I booked like maybe like a week or something in the US, but nothing really serious. Like we're never, I don't know. I mean, gave it a shot, give it in one of those kinds of low level bands. I did go to Europe, maybe 2004, 2005 with I was filling in for somebody for Jeff Barsky, who was playing guitar in the National Blue. They toured a little bit in Europe. They had a little bit of success, I think, in the US, but they, didn't last. They weren't the band. I think on their kind of last record, he had to drop out, so I filled in for him, similar to what I did with E. And yeah, so that was like the only other time I think I've been in Europe. It was like a 2 week tour, and um, but yeah, and basically again hopping on when somebody needs me to traipse around Europe for a couple of weeks. So
So you had when you did the previous tour with the three of you, how long was that tour for?
25 shows in 28 days or something like that, or 20 something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
give or
what's
take.
the dynamic like between the three of you on the road?
I think it's pretty good. I think, I think no, it's good. It's
Yeah,
good.
it's great. Yeah, I feel like everyone's there are like very few grumpy times, like really.
Yeah.
Going back a bit, so Talia, you're originally from Washington, D.C., right?
Yep.
And then you went to Boston, I think, to study, and then you got into music, is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I was always into music, even in DC, but yeah, I moved to Boston I went to Boston University for a semester and then dropped out and joined White Women, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
So they were already going when you became a part of the band, is that right?
no, they were, I didn't start the band. I actually joined that band as a drummer. And, but I'm trying to remember if they were already going. I don't think they had done any shows, but they kind of had a concept and an idea. And a friend of mine was auditioning to be the guitar player, and I went with her just for moral support. We were both like really young, like 17 or 18, and you know, kind of new to Boston, and they didn't have a drummer, and I knew how to play a little bit because I had a friend in high school who played drums and used to keep her drum sets at my house because her parents wouldn't allow it her to play at her house. And so I would bang around. I could play like rudimentary and they didn't have a drummer. So my friend auditioned on guitar and I said, well, I could fill in on the drums. So I ended up joining the band as a drummer initially and then switched to guitar.
And never looked
Um,
back, or do you ever get a hankering
and yeah,
for
no, I never looked back. Well, then my friend who was playing guitar ended up quitting the band, and then they moved me to guitar, and then Dolores decided she wanted to play drums, and then I kind of at some point became the lead singer by default. I think the bass player was tone deaf, and I don't know. Yeah.
would you would you consider yourself to be primarily more one or the other between being a singer and a guitar player?
Um, Not really, no, I think I definitely played guitar in bands before I became a singer. So that's what I started out doing. And but I wouldn't say like I'm not, despite how many years I've played, I don't consider myself a fantastic guitar player. I still like have to work pretty hard, but I love doing it, and it's important to me. And like when I was in Live Skull, I was just the lead singer in that band for the first time. And that's the only time I've been just the singer in a band, and I really missed playing guitar, like, and contributing to that part side of the music. But
I have to jump in and disagree, Talia, because I think you are a fantastic guitar player, and you are doing amazing stuff on this record too, especially with the new rig and the guitar bass setup.
Well,
You're
that's a good moment. I wanted to get into talking about the sound of the album and the evolution of the the instruments that you've got and the way you're constructing the sound. So obviously you've got Ernie here, so you've got a new configuration of the band. But I understand that you've also been, well, maybe rather than me stumbling my way through it, you can explain a bit what you've done to the guitar, because I think you've got some sort of octave construction that you didn't have before. So what is it about the sound of this album that's different as a result of the reconfiguration of the members, and then also the way that you've actually got the instrument set up?
Let me start to answer that one. That Eve has been a three-piece for a long time and for our whole existence. And and we have resisted adding a bass player. So it's two guitars and drums, and we all switch off doing the vocals. And at first, I had a pedal that I built that just was like I would kick it in and it would make a low E note. And most of our songs at first were in the key of E, and so that sort of like filled in the low end for many of our songs. And then we started to want to have it be a little bit more detailed in the low end and get a little more complicated. So I built a new device that appeared on Complications a couple records ago that's called the mono sequencer, where it does bass. It can do, I can patch in just a short sequence of bass notes that's triggered by a stomp action. So it's called the mono sequencer because I have to stomp on it every time. It doesn't loop indefinitely. And so that filled out our sound a little bit more, but then I came to feel that the responsibility of the low end was being a little bit unequally distributed, and I like the way in our earlier records I felt like I was hogging it too much. I like the way in our earlier records how there was sort of like a play in terms of who was handling what part of the sound spectrum. And so that's now for the new record, Living Waters. Thalia has this new setup. I'll let Thalia describe that.
Yeah, we like Jason said, it was we had talked about he had talked to us about wanting other people to take over more bass type duties, and so I experimented with a few different things like a tenor guitar and a 6-string bass, but none of those options seemed right. It seemed I felt like I really needed to play guitar, so how to do the guitar and the bass. And I kind of had there's a band called Paint. I didn't invent this, so I want to give credit. There was a local band in town that where the guitar player had 2 amplifiers, and it wasn't quite the same as me, but it was, and she would just run her guitar through an octave pedal into a bass amp and a guitar amp. She didn't have a separate pickup like I do. So that's what I'm doing is a little different. But yeah, I was inspired by a couple of other people that had done similar things. And then Ernie came up with the idea he had a submarine pickup, which you had bought, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's
something
only
else.
2 strings wide, so it doesn't take all the guitars. So so it's only picking up a couple strings, and we have it on the low strings, and it's very crazy like watching you play. I remember when you were recording, I didn't realize that you were holding down your own bass note while playing figures on top. Yeah, I mean it's very impressive, Talia. But yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was like, yeah, so
So it's like a little pickup, like it's probably about an inch big, and I just put it underneath the 2 bottom strings, and it's got its own separate output. So it's going into an octave pedal and a distortion and into a bass amp. But I also have an on-off switch for it, so I can switch back and forth between, like, so some songs it's not on at all, and I just step on it when I want it to be on, so it kind of comes in and out. Yeah.
And thinking about Living Waters and the songs on it, is there anything in terms of the setup that you've got for particular tracks that is going to be more challenging when it comes to playing them live?
Carrying an extra amplifier.
oh God, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jason had already been
Yeah.
playing through 2 amplifiers, but now I will be as well. But I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like we've kind of did a couple of shows before we went in the studio, and I feel like all the songs, I don't feel like there was anything I did in the studio that would be difficult for me to do live, or that I'm not able to do live. So I think we didn't actually do any overdubs really at all. Did we do
Yeah.
any? Well, Ernie overdubbed saxophone.
Oh yeah, I can't do that live, yeah,
No,
unfortunately.
I don't think he'll be able to do that live. But
Maybe like
maybe,
stomp stuff, yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah,
Do you think that you might do like to have pre-recorded saxophone and play it, or it's like you're going to play it live or you're not going to have it at all?
I was having an idea. I haven't done anything about it, but of inviting in every city we're in, just inviting like a saxophone player. You want to play with us to play with us on the song, because it's a very repetitive song, and it's very free. The saxophone comes in at the end, and it's just kind of jamming on
Yeah,
A minor.
it's
That was my
scronky.
idea, but
Yeah, I briefly played saxophone in like on 1 or 2 songs in that band Siege, from Weymouth, or this grindcore band, and When they would go to other cities, they would enlist folks. I think they played it like with John Zorn in New York, and this guy Luke Stewart, who is he was actually on the cover of the New York Times recently. But he's a sax player. Oh yeah, Talia, you recommended him. And then when they were in the Czech Republic, they would advertise they got some local folks to play sax. So we could do it.
Yeah, I don't know how to do. I haven't talked. We haven't discussed it really. That was just my idea. I don't think I talked about it with you guys, but I thought it might be fun. What do you think, Jason?
Band meeting right now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this idea. I think it's a cool idea.
And if they're horrible, we can turn off their volume.
Yeah, it's the song we have played it live without the sax overdubs, and it works. It's got a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So it's that would be fun to add guests, but also it's not the song will hold up without that. So we can do it either way. I think we'll be fine.
And
Yeah.
talking about energy, I would say one of the things that struck me listening to the latest record is I get a feeling of urgency from the album that comes through very immediately listening to it. And I'm wondering whether that's kind of a characterization that you would identify with the album, and where, at this point in your careers where you've been making music for such a long time, where does that kind of drive and urgency come from at this stage?
Well, we could drop dead at any moment.
I mean, that's
I don't know.
that's actually, yeah, I did think about that recently. I've joined so many bands recently just because, like a lot of folks are, people we know or people like we kind of know. Like I know, tertiarily or secondarily. Life has been feeling short, I suppose, especially pandemic wise. I'm just like, well, I'm gonna do all the creative endeavors I want to do before that. I didn't mean to, I don't know if that's how you guys feel about it, but also music is the best. So like, I don't know, it's just invigorating and energizing, and it's just music is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, also the way we write, I mean, because of being sort of spread out with Jason living in Boulder, which is just quite far away from where me and Ernie live. I mean, there is definitely an urgency, like when the way we do things, we have to like really, we're doing a lot in a sort of concentrated period of time. Maybe that has something to do with
Yeah,
it. I
I
don't
think it might. Yeah. We wrote like when we hadn't played for a long time, and as soon as we got into the rehearsal studio, we came up with like most of the song that's now Clarion, like right away. And that's to my ear like maybe the most urgent song on the whole record.
yeah.
It's a little nervous, but
Yeah.
yeah, in a good way.
And what's the meaning behind it? Well, okay, maybe sort of a multi-part question. Thinking about the whole presentation of the album. So you've got this very striking cover, which I think, Jason, you designed, where you've got, I'm not quite sure exactly how to describe it. I don't know if it's exactly a silhouette, but you've got this hand or the shadow of a hand over some water, and there seems to be a map underneath it. How does that image connect to the concept of the album and the title as well, being Living Waters? What's the idea that you're going for with all of this together?
Well, uh, I don't want to like decode it as if it's like a semiotic problem in a way. I've heard this saying that it's the artist's job to turn on the landing lights, which I love that. I love that idea that you don't want to actually land the plane. That's the pilot's job, or people can map their own interpretations onto things, but you just want to suggest a set of ideas that are resonating with one another, that kind of like set up a situation that is fertile for people to make connections within. So yeah, so the cover image it's a map. It happens to be a map from the Czech Republic, another Czech connection there, but I made a sort of an outline of my hand, and then I had access to a laser cutting tool. So I laser cut the map and came up with just a paper hand, basically, which I then submerged in a nearby creek here in Boulder, Colorado, and photographed. So there's a lot of ideas there that could be triggered for people, but some sort of the title is Living Waters, which is you can interpret it in any number of ways. It is a term that comes up in religion sometimes, but it doesn't have to be a religious term. There's this idea of the hand and the map in the water that could be interpreted in a sort of an environmentalist framework or an Anthropocene framework. But I don't know.
That's
I'm
cool. I'm not
dancing
gonna.
around your question because
No, that's fine. I don't intend to force any kind of, very simple answer to that question. And again, not wanting to force any uh too concrete answers, but in a general sense, what are sort of some of the lyrical concerns of the album? And are you sharing the lyric writing between you?
we usually, if we're doing a lead vocal, we are writing what we're singing. So we're all singing, so we're all writing. And so there's a variety of topics. I mean, an easy one is I guess it's the ending track is called Gain of Function, and that's one that where I wrote. Talia and I both sing on it. We wrote the lyrics that we sing on it. But to me, it's a song about the dangers of gain of function bio research. But it also is sort of um, it's got kind of like a vampire edge to it because I was making a connection with the bat viruses, the bat connection with the coronavirus, and that those some people think that those may have been what was manipulated in laboratories to produce COVID-19. So that to me suggests a kind of a shadowy vampire network behind modern catastrophes.
Did you um did you also make the last album kind of through the pandemic?
That was during the pandemic also, yeah, because we recorded 2 records ago Complications, and we were all set to tour for that, and then the pandemic hit, and so our tour was canceled and rebooked and canceled again. And then then it was like 2 years later, and touring was becoming possible again, but the record is really old at that point. So we recorded any information to sort of have something new to release. So we didn't do a proper tour for Complications.
Thinking of, Talia, you mentioned before about the changes of experience with touring, that before all of the GPS that, you kind of had to refer to physical maps. And it certainly sounds from that point of view like the technology has been beneficial. But I'm wondering, in this modern landscape where we have streaming services being such a dominant mode for people, a lot of people to listen to music, and the sort of implications of that on bands and revenues, how do you all feel in terms of the kind of the pros and cons of the way things have developed with, sort of the digitization and the online aspect of music consumption?
I mean, I think that, the streaming services, like especially particularly Spotify, have really, really hurt bands monetarily. And even before that, like when it was just, I forget what was it called, Napster and all that stuff, when it was just before it kind of became official and people were just like, you know, buying music and not paying for it. And I think it's been pretty devastating to the whole music industry. But of course, like musicians are always going to be around and will always want to be writing and producing music. So we'll figure out a way to work around it. I'm really happy to see vinyl coming back. Vinyl has made a huge comeback, and that's like fantastic. So maybe that's one pro, positive thing to come out of it. And we sell our digital stuff on Bandcamp, and Bandcamp's pretty decent. Like we do get paid for that. We are not on Spotify. I'm just really opposed to being on Spotify, and our record label doesn't do any digital stuff at all. They're a vinyl only label, so it's totally up to us. And other projects, the record will be like, oh, record label will be like, oh, you have to be on Spotify. We have to be on everything. But with this one, we can choose where we want to release stuff digitally. And I feel like Bandcamp is it's a pretty happy medium, and it's they do a lot to sort of help bands promote themselves and stuff. So that's good. That's it's good that bands can put out their own. That's a positive thing of digital stuff is that bands are able to put out their own records now. We don't have a distributor in the United States, and we just do everything through Bandcamp. Like they can buy it from us digitally, and then if they want the LP, they just send us money, which goes through Bandcamp, and Bandcamp takes a little off the top, and but they kind of set up the whole infrastructure of that happening, and then we just ship it to them. So I'd say pro and con, more con than pro, but there's definitely
Right.
pro sides to it. That's in my opinion. I don't know how other people feel about it.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And as a sort of a follow-on question from this, I was sort of interested, like there are how to phrase this. So let's take, for example, I guess you all know the band The.
Yeah, I know.
So existing before, any kind of oh, I've forgotten what SEO stands for. Search engine optimization. So before such a concept existed, you had The. And I suppose now there's some kind of workaround where you can type in The and it will lead you to the band. But I feel like this is kind of one of those names that really does not lend itself towards being searched for. And there's plenty of other bands as well. Like there's a band that I interviewed the main guy from a while ago called Code. And already there's probably about 8 different bands that are called Code. But also if you type in Code, you're going to get to a million different things. So I feel like I don't know whether this was a conscious thing or just unconscious, but calling your band E to me feels either like a direct rejection of the need to kind of fit within this internet search age. But then on the other hand, on Bandcamp, you are a band called E. So how kind of opposed to all of this or just indifferent to it or sort of accepting to this, element of people finding your music are you?
I think
Yeah.
indifferent probably more. I mean, we were very conscious of the fact that like, oh, we wanted to call our band E. What we didn't want to call it that to be obscure, but we had a few different reasons for calling it that, and we did talk about the fact that it would not be searchable, and it didn't really phase us. And I don't know, Jason. I mean, do you want to comment on that? Me and Jason were the ones that decided to call the band E. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was especially like that name because it's such an overburdened letter in an age of e-commerce and email and everything that it seemed almost to like become empty of meaning. That it's burdened with so much meaning that it becomes empty again of meaning. And I found that very interesting. And it also, I mean, Talia and I started playing about a decade ago, began this band, and that, it was already the time of the internet. And I was surprised at how hard it was to come up with a band name, because now we could like come up with a band name and put it into a search engine and be like, oh yeah, there's already a band called that, or there's so many of these, there's something close, and it took us a long time to come to E, but when we came to it, it felt really right to me.
So another Czech connection. There was a band from Czechoslovakia, from the Czech Republic, or at that point it was Czechoslovakia, from the city of Brno called E,
Yeah.
and they put out a couple of records. So there have been a couple of bands called E before, and one in the Czech Republic. And at one point we were thinking about covering one of their songs. So we're doing a show in Brno, and we had an idea they're really cool band. But yeah. The only downside to me is that sometimes people think our name is a band called E, and
Mm.
that's a little bit of a bummer. Like when you're on tour and you get to a club and the poster says, "Tonight, a band called E," you know.
It's on
But
the poster behind you. On the door, it says a band. I can see a band called
band,
E. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, yeah,
Oh, there you
yeah, it does.
Case in point. And, thinking about, like you say, you formed E in the midst of kind of like this modern age of music consumption, but it seems like touring is fairly important for the band and live connections with audiences. So, in terms of getting the music out there and being a DIY band as well, like what proportion of your time are you investing in, you know, shows or interviews or any kind of social media activity? Like how do you, and I think as well, from what I understand of the band, you are very kind of democratic and you like to share the responsibilities out. So how do you collectively sort of decide what we're going to invest our time and energy into from the perspective of getting the band out there and connecting with people?
We just sort of, identify things as they come up. Like this week, Talia pointed out, oh, it's Bandcamp Friday, and we should do a post about that so we can sell some records. And that was like a ball that got tossed up in the air, and Ernie caught it and made a quick little video that we then posted to the various social media platforms that we post on. But that's it's kind of whoever has the time and the interest. I don't know if there's a formula to who has to do what.
And I think we all have different strengths, luckily, and we don't disagree very often, or we don't mind disagreeing with each other. I mean, sometimes like I'm not very good with like visual art stuff, and both Jason and Ernie are much better with that. But like, so I don't usually, I occasionally make posters and stuff, but I usually let them do it. And but if I don't like something they do, I'd say it, and they're fine with that. Like we're kind of like we are even Democrat, even though we all like kind of do different, have sort of different roles. It's still like democratic. And I think we haven't been able to tour, I think, as much as at least as I would like to, particularly in the States, just because of, pandemic and people's jobs and just sort of, life stuff. And so we talked about kind of really making an effort this time to tour as much as we could, like on this record, um, like we'd love to come to England. You're based in Oxford, is that right?
Yeah,
And we get
at
a
the
lot of
at the moment.
we get a lot of requests to play in England, and we've never done it. It's just a time thing. So I'm kind of hoping that of maybe doing England as a sort of separate trip, maybe because like doing, and it's something we could do like in a week, and maybe at a time of year where plane tickets aren't prohibitively expensive, but because of Jason's job, we're kind of limited to the summers for long tours. So
Are you all working independently from music, or do you have work within the music world somehow that sustains you?
I'm now a part-time professor, and I get to teach some classes about sound and media production. So it's sort of like very related, which is I feel very very lucky after working lots of different what I call day jobs over the decades to have a day job now that's like relevant to my interests is a very lucky situation for me.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. I'm calling from an empty office here, and yeah, I guess like as a musician, I kind of consider myself the most tourist. You know, these guys have been working really hard and being able to do lots of stuff and are very accomplished, but out of like I have the most conventional, I'd say, career right now. But I've been here long enough and they like me enough that they're just like, sure, go away for 6 weeks, and when you come back, you'll still have a job. So feel pretty lucky.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful. And Talia, for you?
And for me, I'm actually just doing music right now.
Yeah.
In the past, I've done other jobs, mostly in the sort of catering, restaurant, cooking world. I enjoy cooking very much, but but yeah, for a while now, I've just been doing music, and I kind of keep that going by having like a lot of different projects going at the same time, or scheduling them. Though of course, every once in a while, the ball stops rolling for a little while. And like I try to kind of like always have something going ahead, and yeah, do the best I can with that.
And just diving back in a little bit into your various different musical projects. So you sort of had, I think, about 20 years of playing with various bands, and then you started, I guess, your solo career in, was it 2001 with Been Here and Gone? Was that your first
Yeah,
solo
yep,
record? And you've
yeah.
still continued to release solo. I mean, when was the last solo record? It was just a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, well, 2021 Perfect Vision. Yeah.
So why was there any particular reason why you decided to start releasing music as a solo artist? And sort of at the other end of that, what do you get from E that your solo music doesn't afford you?
I decided to kind of go on as a solo artist, sort of like after Come split up like in the late 90s, and I think I was had the experience with Come of being kind of when like halfway through the Come story, our first rhythm section left, and me and Chris Brokaw kept going, and we were the songwriters in Come, really, though everyone came up with their own parts. But we kind of got a lot of flack for like, well, how can you keep going, how can you still call it Come, without Arthur and Sean? And it was kind of like I just kind of had it with with bands. I felt like like on most of the bands I was in, I was like, a pretty significant percent of the song wrote a pretty significant percent of the songs, but then the bands would always break up, and then I never really felt like the songs were mine, even though I don't know, I just decided I wanted to just do my own thing, and be able to have these songs. They're not going to be my songs, and they'll always be my songs no matter who I'm playing them with. Like so, and I'm still doing that. Actually, I'm working on a new solo record now. I'm working on getting, haven't gone into the studio yet, but I'm hoping to get in there in the next few months. And working with a band. I enjoy playing with other people much more than I enjoy playing solo. So even when I'm doing solo stuff, I'm usually, writing the songs and then getting people who I like to play on them. Um, but I missed the collaboration. I missed started missing, yeah, the collaboration and the bouncing ideas off. And got tired of being kind of like the lead singer songwriter, and I wanted to work with other people. To me, that's always been the most enjoyable part of playing music, is the connection with other musicians, and what comes out of that. So so I started E. It was during a time when I kind of had my eye on Jason for a while. I was a fan of his band Neptune, and I knew that he was going through Neptune had gone through some changes, and was a couple, and he wasn't really doing anything at the time, and
Yeah, you were
I
waiting
was
for that
without a
moment that you could
drummer.
snap him up.
I did actually, I did. It had been on my mind. Jason was completely oblivious to this, but it had been on my mind. But I didn't know what would happen. There was one show I saw of them, and I still remember the show and where it was, and I just remember thinking, I understand what this guy's doing in this sort of like certain level, and I think that maybe we'd be a good fit musically, but then, you know, didn't it was just kind of in the back of my mind. But strange, I know. And then but I didn't know if it would work out. It's kind of always like a crapshoot. I mean, there's been times when I seen someone play, like a drummer that I would like, oh, that guy's fantastic, and like we should play together. And then like just because you can really enjoy someone's work with other people, and I don't know, the chemistry thing is kind of like a weird thing, like it's just one of those things that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it just happened to work. But
And I've got sort of drawing things to a close. I've got a bit of a philosophical, well, it's a very philosophical question. And you've already sort of given partial answers to this. Like Ernie was talking about the pleasure of making music, and you've also talked there, Talia, about the value of the collaborations. But I'm wondering if you could define why you make music. Because at a DIY level, it's not particularly financially enriching, but you choose to continue to make music. Is there a way that you can kind of define what it is that drives you
Who wants to go first?
on this nice, simple question?
you can go first.
Um, I would say that I have been drawn to music as an intermedia artist, and something that I love about doing music is the intermediate nature of it. That it's not only about like what notes you're choosing to play on an instrument, but then, I mean, with rock music or many genres of music, then you get lyrics to put in, and so now suddenly you've got there's like a poetic aspect to it as well as a sonic aspect to it, and then there's this performance element because now you're going to go on a stage and deliver this, and so now you're combining three art forms, and then wait a minute, you also have to like come up with an album cover design and a t-shirt, and so there's these visual art aspects that come into it, or make a music video or something. It's like constantly it I'm interested in many different kinds of media, and it for me it's a what's the term from Wagner? It's a Gesamtkunstwerk, and so I enjoy it for that reason.
I'm gonna. My answer's pretty short because it's not also like I don't want to follow your answer because it's gonna sound as not as cool. But I feel like I read a really brief quote, and it was a Steve Albini quote, being like, "We have a creative urge, so we this is what we do about it." I think that's kind of it. One of the things. The other thing is, I think I saw Hillary, the person from Horpaint, was she did like a little pedal demonstration kind of performance, and at one point she's just talking about like just like the feeling of with that guitar, and she steps on the pedal and like she's moving this entire room. It's like this feeling of like sharing, but also like just having this kind of power, not necessarily nefarious, but like being able to to project something bigger than like you don't have to be strong, or you have ideas and you're just forcing them, I guess, kind of with people. And I think part I just also there's something soothing about music, and that it's just completely just emotion. I mean, yeah, part of it is like, like if I, you know, I guess just being blunt, like good for depression, like if if you're just it just makes I remember when I was a kid, like I would just kind of sing sometimes just to keep myself from feeling sad. Something about just that vibration and the physical, just it's just I think yeah, my complete opposite of Jason, completely just emotional, and there's just a positive thing. I guess it's just, like I need to do it or else I'll be sad. But yeah, and just like being able to share something like that with people, it's just like I think it's the connection. And when we played, and yeah, performing is just joyful. Yeah, it just feels good. Yeah, not particularly an intellectual answer, but I think that's for me, that's the truth.
I think that's a perfectly insightful answer. So, Talia, you're the third piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a way of expressing myself, um, without words, and that I kind of like. And so, and I like writing the words too, but I think what I love about music is the way it can communicate with people. And it's beyond language. It's something that is beyond language. So it kind of frees that part of your brain up, because I listen to all different types of music, and frequently music that is not sung in English, and it makes no difference to me. You know what I mean? Like I can still enjoy it, even though I probably would enjoy it more if I actually understood it. But it's just you can still kind of get the feeling, so I guess it must activate us. I'm not a neuroscientist or anything, but I would imagine that it's activating a different part of your brain, and a special part of your brain, music, and that's probably why I'm so addicted to it and to playing it.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. And I appreciate all of those answers. I think they are all different dimensions of the sort of the insight of what value making music can have. So I appreciate that. So thank you. And
You.
as a real final closer, obviously the tour is coming up. Living Waters has just come out. So I'm sure we want to encourage everybody to come and see the band when you're in their area. But in terms of getting hold of the album, where people can get it, and just keeping track of the band in general, what are the best means to do that?
If you're in Europe, you should get it through our record label, Silver Rocket, and they're pretty easy to find. You could just Google Silver Rocket Records, and you'll be able to find them. They are a Czech label, but they also have a website in English. You can choose which language you want. It'd be much cheaper for you to order it from them. They don't have the digital, however. So if you live in Europe and you want the vinyl, order it from them, or come see us on tour and buy it from us directly, because we'll definitely be selling it at shows. And for North America and other places in the world, and all the digital stuff, you can buy it at our Bandcamp page, which is a band called e.bandcamp.com. So
And you've got digital copies of all of your releases up on Bandcamp,
yes,
do you?
we do, yeah.
And in terms of, being active on social media, is Instagram the account that you're using most?
We use
And
Instagram and Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And we also have a website that Jason's put up, which is really, really excellent and completely up to date with like everything. All our press is there, all our shows are there, all our archival stuff, all our videos are there.
And that's just a band called E.com.
A band called E.com for the band
Yeah.
whose name is just E.
Exactly.
The name of the band is just E, capital E.
Capital E.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, Ernie, Talia, thank you so much for your time. It was a great pleasure to talk to you. And although you are not coming to the UK, yeah, I don't know. If I find myself on mainland Europe, then I will definitely do my best to come and see you guys. But otherwise, I'll be keeping an eye out to see if you do come and play the UK at some point in the future.
We're going to try.
So much,
Love
yeah.
that.
Thank you, Tom.
Love to. Yeah, it's great talking to you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
All the
Thank
best.
you.
pipeline. The first responders are on the front